Aloha, everybody. Welcome back to Unusual Business Episode 2. We are a husband and wife duo, crafting duo. And this podcast is about crafting, mostly crocheting, as well as some psychology. I'm a psychology professor, so I'll sort of loop in some articles every now and then and some science. And my specialty is in neuroscience, so everything in the brain. And my husband is a recruiter, so it's also about business. And today's Chris's turn. So the last section of our podcast today will be about a new thing that he found that he's really excited about. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of really cool things to show you, I think, today. And the very first section of our podcast is going to be called Finished Objects. All right, so the first finished object that I wanted to show you today, I think is kind of obvious. Let me just put this to the side really quickly, is my sweater. And I'm calling this Cielo de Invierno, and that means winter sky, because it reminds me a lot of the winter sky in New Mexico. And I'll actually take this off here in a quick second so I can hold it closer to the camera. But I think you can see that running down the center of this sweater is actually a cable. Bless you.
Thank you.
So you can see the cable running down the front of the sweater. And this was made in Tunisian in the round. And if you're not familiar with Tunisian in the round, Tunisian is a particular type of crochet where you pull up loops on a hook. I'm actually making something else that I'll talk about briefly here in a minute with Tunisian, and I can show you that a little bit more thoroughly. And then you close the hooks, the loops on your next pass. So you do a forward pass where you pick up all the different loops, and then you do a return pass where you close all of those different stitches. So in that way, it's actually a really nice combination sort of crocheting and knitting. And for many people, it's the crocheting that they think looks like knitting. So I'll show you this again up close in a second. But the body of this is made in Tunisian knit stitch, TKS. And then this is made from a combination, the cable is made from a combination of Tunisian pearl stitch and Tunisian knit stitch for the background. And this is my own pattern. I just sort of measured myself at the widest point, and then I added about an inch of positive ease. I didn't want it to be super baggy. And then I found a random knitting cable chart on the internet, and I just sort of learned all the stitches I needed. I think the stitches were twist 3 front, twist 3 back, and then left and right leaning cables. So nothing particularly complicated in here for somebody who's watching who's a knitter. But it was a little bit complicated to sort of try to convert that into Tunisian, to go from knitting to Tunisian. So I watched a couple of tutorials that were really helpful. And then the collar, and then also you can't really see here, but the bottom, as well as the sleeves, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute or two, are actually standard crochet, and these are just half double crochet back loop only. So this one was sort of made by starting on one side, coming around, and then overlapping behind. So I'm actually going to go ahead and take this off so I can hold it up and show it to you in a little bit more detail here really quickly. All right, so as I mentioned, I wanted to show it to you in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to just hold it up so that you can actually see it in its entirety. So you can see there's sort of the structure of the garment. It's there's no shaping, so it's very much straight up and down, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a very casual sort of sweater for the couple of days that it does get chilly, for at least for us who live in Hawaii. Chilly for us, by the way, is about 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
Is today one of those days, babe?
Today is not one of those days. Today is a very hot day. So I know everybody else is going through polar vortex. We are going through early summer, and it's not my favorite.
Oh, and I should point out, I do feel bad for anybody who's going through a winter storm right now, because I heard a lot of people's power is going out in different parts of the U.S. mainland, and I just feel really terrible, and I hope the gas doesn't stop and that the electricity comes back on. And I'm sorry, and I look forward to your power coming back on.
Yeah, and Chris and I both lived in New England for a long, or the Northeast for a long period of time. Chris is actually from there. He's from New York.
New York.
So a large...
Which is not in the Northeast.
True, technically.
Yeah,
Well,
it's kind of its
New
own
England.
thing.
The Atlantic, technically, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. But my point being that many of us have, or both of us have many, many friends from back there. So we know people who've been affected by the polar vortex and the storm. So yeah, we're wishing you good luck and hoping that everything turns out smoothly really quickly here. So anyways, back to the sweater. So let me just give you an even closer view here. I'm going to try and avoid the microphone. So you can see there that it has what is called Donegal tweed, and it's in the color Cobalt. This is actually from Knit Picks, and Knit Picks, if you're not familiar, is sort of an affordable brand of generally carrying more natural fiber, although they do have some acrylics there as well. So I just want to give you sort of an up close and personal look at the sweater. I won't be wearing it for the rest of the podcast because, as I mentioned, it's really hot. So,
really hot.
I love making sweaters, but if I'm being honest with myself, sweaters are not the best thing to make in Hawaii. I just can't get them out of my system for some reason. So I don't know. I'm stuck on them. I don't really know what else I would make, honestly.
Have you ever made a shirt?
Yeah, I made the shirt I showed last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do have, I think I showed you all of the different summer yarns last podcast, and I'll sort of systematically work my way through there and make summer tops from all the cotton and bamboo. But I just don't like it as much. I really like my wools and my alpacas, and I don't know. I like cuddly creatures more than plants, I guess.
Maybe we should learn how to make like athletic jerseys so that we can like have sleeveless shirts that might sit like this.
Well, this is sleeveless, right? It's just alpaca, so.
I do like what you did with the sleeves here, the way you worked it out.
Yeah,
So-
and I'm going to talk about that in a second
Okay.
to talk about how I learned how to do this, because this is sort of a special technique that I hadn't learned before.
It's a cool contribution, yeah.
Yeah, this was supposed to have sleeves originally, and then I realized I was being completely nutty, and I would never actually wear this in Hawaii. So, I wanted to wear it at least 2 days of the year. So, all right, so that is my finished object. I don't think I have any other finished objects because this sort of took all of my attention for the last week. All right, so.
Oh, heads up, there might be a slipper coming.
Oh, he hopes there's a slipper
I
coming.
hope there's a slipper coming. I really do enjoy new slippers out here. Like Annika said, around 65, it gets real cool to us. And so having, the floor gets cool, and so it feels really good to have slippers on, at nighttime and early mornings.
And Chris is a New Yorker, but you wouldn't know it from like how he handles the cold. It's not good.
How I handle the cold in general, or just like out here?
I mean, I was thinking more generally, but
I handle the cold perfectly fine. I grew up in a place where it was 32 degrees all the time in the wintertime, and even colder sometimes. I mean, it's not like sub-zero like some of y'all, like Chicago, like Canada people. Like, I don't know anything about that. But like between 0 and 32, or like 0 and 55, yeah, I'm fine. I do just fine.
He
just not
does.
out here because my internal thermostat is set like everybody else's, and it feels cold at 65.
he does very well in heat-controlled conditions in the winter.
I do very well in all heat-controlled
I'll tell a
conditions.
quick story. So I used to live in Bridgeport, and
Where's
Bridgeport,
Bridgeport?
Connecticut.
Okay.
So I was getting there. For those who are not familiar with Connecticut, it's in a part called Fairfield County, which is 90 minutes-ish from New York, if you take the train, I guess, which I frequently did. And I lived in an old bank building. And we had these just absolutely horrible heater/air conditioning units that broke, oh gosh, like maybe every other day. It was awful. And so it would sometimes be extremely cold in my apartment. And then on the swing side in the summer, it would be extremely hot. So everything else about that apartment, lovely. But that particular part of living there was awful. And Chris he handled the heat pretty well. But when he'd come over in the winter, it would be like Chris Caterpillar, like Chris Cocoon. Like wherever the nearest like blanket was, that was where Chris was. So.
I mean, it was like unsafe cold in your apartment.
It was cold.
It was really cold.
I think I finally got it fixed for at least a short amount of time by writing to corporate and saying that it was uninhabitable, and things got fixed very
It was
quickly.
really cold.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a much bigger apartment, so I missed that about it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
But it wasn't near a beach that you wanted to go to every day of the year.
No, actually, one time I went to the beach and I came out and there was like, I think it was oil on me.
What?
Yeah. It was really gross. But it was technically a beach. I mean, I'm spoiled now, so I would not go within probably a good mile of like, Connecticut coastline anymore. No offense to Connecticut. But
There's rocks.
But Hawaii has spoiled me forever for beaches in the Northeast. So
You want to get yourself a pampered beach if
Yeah.
you're in Connecticut. You don't want the natural beaches.
No.
Not that they're not lovely places,
I would pay
but
for them.
yeah, you can pay for the beach, which is kind of you can't do that here.
No, you can't charge people to go on a beach. Yeah.
And so that part's unfortunate, but it is a problem. The rocks are a problem. So you just want to keep like your slippers or your flip flops on, or
The
your
rocks, the
water
muck.
shoes.
There's a lot of stuff that's a problem. The smell of the New England Sound.
No, the Long Island Sound does not
So
naturally
insulted.
have a smell.
It has a
that is
smell.
not salty.
It has a smell.
It smells like the ocean.
So this is me coming from the desert, and like our river smells like a river, but it's also it's flowing, and it's not salty, so it doesn't smell like an ocean, like where there are fish that are just doing their business all the time. It's not a good smell. So
The Long Island Sound smells fine. You should travel there.
we're gonna agree to disagree, and I think
Yeah.
we're also gonna move on to unfinished objects. All right, so I think for unfinished objects, I actually have, this will be sort of my largest section because I have 3 different ones that I'm really working on. One that I should be working on as I'm talking to you, but I'm just getting distracted. So let me show you that one first, actually, and then I can get back to working on it here in a bit. So this is going to be a shawl. I think I showed it last time as well, but it's gotten a little bigger since then. This is for my mother-in-law, Elva. And she really wanted a shawl that is the color of her sorority. Her sorority is
A Delta Sigma Theta.
Delta Sigma Theta. And the plan is sort of generally to make this big, beautiful red shawl. I'm going to put a little elephants marching either on this side or that side, a little elephant border. And then I'm also going to do the symbol of the sorority up, possibly on the top, like embroider it on. So that's the plan, anyways. And I'm enjoying working on this. It's kind of a mindless crochet, honestly. So I'm just going to hold this a little bit closer so you can sort of see the stitches. So that's, again, Tunisian knit stitch. The whole thing is Tunisian knit stitch. And this edge here is created actually by systematically increasing and decreasing stitches. So there's no other stitch that's being used at the bottom there. And I don't think I said what yarn this was last time. It's a little bit darker, or a little bit pinker, I think, in color than what's being shown on the screen. And it is Lion Brand Superwash Merino in the color Cayenne. And I went on I do a lot. I went on a Lion Brand shopping spree, maybe early December, and bought all of their red yarn for reasons unknown to me because I don't wear red. So I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was just in a mood and it was cheap and I went for it. So that's one project. The next project that I'll show you is a project for my father. And so my father, for a very long time, did not want anything crocheted. And so then I asked him, I was like, all right, do you want a sweater? And at first he said no. And then we had a conversation. He's like, actually, yes. And I want it in fall colors. I want a turtleneck that isn't a turtleneck. I want it to be perfectly like size so that it hits just right at my pants, but not any lower and not any higher. Like there was a very long list of demands. So the man went from wanting nothing to wanting like the most specific sweater I've ever made. So this, I've got the front done, and you can sort of see the turtleneck that's not a turtleneck at the top there. Now, there was a small mistake that was made in this, and that is that I made it out of alpaca. And I forgot alpaca stretches. So I just want to show you something really quickly. And this will be going probably in the dryer to see if I can fix it at some point. But if you look, so this is the perfect size for him. Unfortunately, unless he grows by a good 4 or 5 inches. The first time he washes this, it's going to be way too big. So I think that what I'll do is I will wash it and then put it in the dryer for just a minute or two, which is how people generally fix that issue.
Wait, just a minute or two? That's the lesson?
Yeah, it shrinks it sort of back into size, but you don't want it to go too long, or you could felt it, or you could shrink it, to have a little puppet size. So, so that's half of it, and then I also have the other bit here. Let's see if I can find. Oh, here we go. So I had just started the bottom. It's bottom up in pieces. So then I have to do the back, and then or the front, and then also the sleeves. And then let me show you the yarn really quickly. So this one is also Lion brand. Bought on the same shopping spree, I think, as the red yarn. And it is baby alpaca, 100%. And it's a lightweight yarn. And I'll look at the color here in a second. I think the color is auburn. Yes, so auburn. So let me just hold it up for a second. That's kind of true to color. It's kind of like a dark, warm, caramelly color. I don't know. Something like that. So very pretty yarn. I really do love this project. I was just a little discouraged by the issue with swatching. So, and the issue being I didn't swatch. So, yeah, I'll do that in the future.
It's cute though.
Thank you. Yeah,
It's
I think
soft.
you'll like it. It's very soft. All right, so the last project that I'll show for you, and these are just the projects I'm showing. I actually have many more projects. Is a sweater for my brother-in-law, Kenny. And Kenny was kind of the opposite of my father. He had very few demands and was very easy to make something for. So he has this sort of simple green sweater with a shawl collar on the top. And then at the bottom we have a ribbing. The ribbing is made out of alternating single crochet and half double crochet back loop only. The front of the sweater, I won't give away too many details because it is a paid pattern, but has this nice sort of pattern on the top. Let me come over the microphone so you can sort of see that. And then the back of it is all extended single crochet. It's just a solid back. Yeah. And then I'll show you really quickly the yarn as well. Everyone in my husband's family is about 8 feet tall. So that one took me quite a while, as opposed to my father, who's not small, but also not particularly enormous either. So for reference, Chris is 6'5", and Kenny's 6'3", probably. So yeah, I do love making them sweaters, but I do kind of dread it when I get to like the sleeves. So this is the yarn. It's merino camel. And the color is, if I can find it, olive. And that's what it looks like. This is kind of a mess, but you get the general idea. So it's a beautiful sort of like dark sage green. And
yeah.
Kenny's going to look great in it. So.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
He's a big green fan.
Yeah, well, he looks good in pretty much everything. He's a very like put together, very stylish guy. So, yeah.
Suave, one might say.
You could say suave. I think that would be appropriate.
You're welcome.
Yeah, if you ever watch this Kenny,
Tell him he's handsome.
So handsome.
Is it true? Do you mean it?
No, I mean it. Yeah, he's a very handsome guy. He's very well put together, very stylish.
Oh.
Yeah, I think he's going to look great in the sweater. I really do.
I think so too.
Yeah. All right, so that's it for works in progress, excuse me.
Whoa.
Well, and no. You have your own section. Now we get to the long-running segment, which is the scarf.
It's coming along. We let me show it off. So we've added a lot of rows since last time. Really just in the last
let him see the other side, because it's the wrong side. Sorry.
last 19 minutes. And and it's beautiful and growing and it's shapely, curvaceous, one might say.
I just want to point out that's not normally like a good attribute for a scarf. but Chris is very proud of himself here. So it's Zaftig.
Yeah, exactly.
Zaftig. It's a good kind of curvy.
I mean, it'll come in handy in like cold New Jersey though, or wherever it makes itself in the world. Just the same as a straight scarf.
Yeah.
Don't make fun of my curvy scarf. I don't make fun of your work.
This would be ideal if Ian had like a major neck deformity where like, you know, part of his neck like curved in, then he would have a scarf that was like perfectly curved to match his neck issue.
Ian and I...
Unfortunately, well, fortunately for Ian has a perfectly normal neck. So the scarf will just have to be a style statement.
Exactly. Ian and I are absolutely trying to create new style statements with our small errors. And we are happy to, show off our pieces, even though they're a tiny bit imperfect, but we're both, first time in it. And so I don't think I ever explained that in our original introduction. And by the way, I'm Chris, because I'm going to mention my name this episode.
I mentioned it for you.
Oh, thanks, babe. Taking care of business.
Unusual business.
Nice. See what you did there. Like and subscribe. Ian and I are kind of first-time crocheters. It's probably my first big project, but I am excited. I was going to bring up before for my piano cover, and so just looking forward to that opportunity to get the dimensions and stuff so that I can get started on that one day down the road after I finish the scarf. And so with that...
Or the scarf with handles, is that what you called it? The piano bench.
Oh, yeah.
Basically a scarf, but just add like...
It really is.
Yeah.
But it's all for you, and hopefully it'll be straighter, because it will have some utility beyond warmth with protection.
It'll be art.
Yes, it'll be art. Dust protection. Do they have a yarn that like will prevent dust? Like it'll just like make it like go in the other direction? Like a dryer sheet?
Like a yarn with little lasers that like just
Yeah.
defeats dust as it comes in.
Well, no, that it's like magnetic maybe and just like makes the dust go someplace else. Like electrostatic. Like,
Ian, you're an engineer. So
Yeah.
can you figure this out for Chris? He wants a yarn with built-in laser system that targets and then defeats dust as it approaches.
Exactly.
Or alternatively with magnets that just sorts that out.
Well, electroscience can do a lot of really cool work for us, and it's all about using the right materials, so maybe it's not baby alpaca, maybe it's not acrylic.
I sensed a little bit of shade coming from your direction there. What's wrong with baby alpaca?
You did call my scarf Zaftig, so.
Zaftig.
Zaftig.
Yeah.
So I am, tiny bit bitter, and yes, it's a little bit curvy, but it's coming along. It's coming along.
I'm not laughing at your scarf. I'm laughing with your scarf.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. So with that, I think we have concluded with the scarf.
Yes. All right, so I think we'll move on to things we learned. All right, so for things we learned, I wanted to talk about a new technique or something new that I learned either in crafting or sort of, outside of crafting, I suppose. So mine is going to be related to crafting today, and it's really related to the sleeves and the collar of this garment. And that is sort of adding the collar or adding the ribbing as you go. So sometimes I had added it directly to, although the technique was different than what I used for this particular garment. But before, often I had crocheted the ribbing separately and then sewed it on. For this, I worked the ribbing directly onto the piece. And I had to do it a couple of different times. So the first time that I did the sleeves, I tried to sort of do a continuation of the knit stitch, and that looked awful. It looked like I was like, what do you call those ones where it like goes up the sides? It's worn by like, it's like very Avatar, if you've seen the show Avatar, they have the little collars that go directly up, like Princess Azula. That was, which I love. I think that's a great show, but not the style I was looking for in this particular sweater. So instead, I decided to add this ribbing, but it turns out what you really wanted was a sort of tight stretch. So you wanted something that sort of pulled in, because of course our arms get thinner as they go down. And so I worked it directly onto the garment. And you do that by first chaining out a certain amount. So I chained out 10. Then I worked down, grabbed one of the edge stitches and slip stitched up a couple more, continued across, came back, grabbed a stitch, slip stitched a couple up, went across, etc. For me, for this particular garment, I slip stitched up about 3 different stitches. So it really was kind of a tight fit there. But that was a new skill for me. So that was not something that I had really done previously, or nothing that I had done quite this evenly. So I think that this will be sort of a turning point for me. Because of course adding a ribbing later is much different than adding a ribbing at the bottom, where you're making the ribbing first, then you're sort of crocheting on top of the ribbing. So yeah, that was really interesting. I think I'd like to in the future maybe try a ribbing in Tunisian. There's a stretchy ribbing that I just learned about that I haven't ever tried before, which I will probably give a shot on my next sweater, because we all know I need more sweaters. So that's the thing that I learned. Is there anything that you learned, Chris, that you want to bring up?
I learned that I need to continuously try to perfect this craft. Otherwise, I get made fun of in public.
Wow. He's so shady today.
So
I think are you still working on things I learned?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just really need to perfect it, and I want it to turn out the best it can be, and for the next one to be amazing too. So, but maybe we don't make people feel comfortable by digging at them in their work on their first one.
Okay, I think I can probably take a hint.
I think we're concluded now. No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so
things we learned.
All right.
Don't make fun of our husbands on television.
So I guess that concludes things I learned. I've complimented you many times.
I know you have, but like for me and others that are out there, not all of us want to hear the digs. We want to get it done. We want to hear the compliments, and maybe just mentioning the curviness once is enough. Maybe using 2 and 3 different terms is perhaps extra per episode.
All right, so noted. And Chris actually, while being a little bit shady, does bring up a good point, which is something that we actually chatted about before. And that is that you don't have to be an artist to have a hobby, right? In other words, you don't have to be a master, right? Somebody who's really skilled at something. Just doing something and creating something really is enough to do something. Just creating things for the sake of creating things. You don't have to create a masterpiece every time.
Even as an adult. When
Exactly.
you're trying out new stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that that's kind of a sad, that was a sad thing that I encountered when I was teaching some of my colleagues to crochet. I did a crochet workshop maybe a year ago. And some of them said, because I mentioned my own story, I'll tell it at a different episode, but I started back when I was about 10. But you don't have to start as a child to be good at something that uses your hands and is skilled. And even if you're not good at it, if you're enjoying it, that really is enough. So, yes, in his shadiness, he brought us to a really good place. So I think that concludes things I learned. And now we're going to move on to stash expansion. All right, so moving on to stash expansion. And today I thought it'd be fun to show you a couple of the different knit picks items that I had got. And excuse me, I should have taken these out of the bag before, so hopefully that's not too loud. So I just wanted to show you first an up close of the yarn that I was using for the sweater. Just sort of move that to the side. And again, this is called Knit Picks. This is Knit Picks in their Cobalt color. It's City Tweed DK, so DK weight. And you can really get a good sense of the flecks. So the flecks are Donegal tweed. And the yarn itself is a combination of wool and alpaca, superfine alpaca. And it is very soft, so it's not particularly itchy. And I'm sure it will continue to soften up even as I wash it. All right, so then just a couple of other colors here that I wanted to show you. Just give me a quick second, and pardon the crinkle. Okay. All right, so then the next color that I got was in a yarn line called Galileo. And there's some rabbit fur because we have rabbits. Just a little bit Flemish Giant as well, which is true of all of my yarn and all of my projects. It's about 1% Flemish Giant. All right, so this one is Galileo Sport Weight yarn in the color Nebula. And so it's a lighter weight yarn. It's reading fairly accurately. And it's like a very dark, rich purple. And I had no other purple yarns. This is my one and only purple yarn. And I think I will probably make, I bet you guys can guess what I'll make, a sweater out of this as well. For me, for somebody, maybe for Sweatergeddon 2021, which I'm sure will occur and drive Chris crazy. Some things have to be predictable in life. And then...
Do they?
Yeah.
I guess they do.
They do. Yeah. You know. Where would you be if I wasn't stressing about sweaters in November? Like, what would life even be? So the next one is also Knit Picks. So all of these are from Knit Picks. This one is in their gloss line. Oh, and I should have mentioned the fiber content, of the Galileo. The fiber content is 50% merino wool and then 50% viscose from bamboo. So it's merino and bamboo, which is not a combination I'd ever seen before. Really interesting and very soft, but also very lightweight. Kind of different. So this one is in their gloss line, which is their merino and silk line. So it's 70% merino and 30% silk. And it is in the colorway Captain, and it is a DK weight yarn. So it's a really beautiful, not quite accurate on the screen. It's not that blue. It's like a dark green blue, like a dark, dark teal. It is very pretty. I think that this one is going to be a sweater, not for me, but for somebody who will likely watch this, so I won't say who. Yeah, so also a yarn that I'm really excited about. So those are 3 of the different things that I acquired recently and that I'm really excited to try out. Just gonna stick those all back in. And then, Chris, did you have anything that I guess you didn't buy any yarn recently? Oh, I didn't bring the possum yarn.
Oh, you know what though? I did acquire flowers for Valentine's Day for Annika.
Yes. I'll put a picture here, maybe between us, if I can figure out how to do that. So look at the beautiful flowers. If I figured out how to edit it. If not, they were really pretty. So.
That's really all I acquired this week.
Yep. They are very pretty. They're like a combination of daisies and
white
roses and thistles, and just very cool textures and colors. The palette's like kind of green and white. So yeah, very pretty.
Yeah, to all the Valentines all around the world, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy late Valentine's Day. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and I actually see something that you forgot to talk about.
Yeah. Do we want to do that?
I think we'll put it off until next episode, I guess.
Okay.
Seemed a little pointed. All right, so I think that is going to conclude the crochet related or crafting related content for the podcast. So if you're here really just to look at yarn and watch Chris crochet his not Zaftig, beautifully perfect linear scarf, then that will sort of conclude the podcast for you. for everybody else who would like to learn about something kind of cool that Chris wants to talk about, this will be the business / new find section with Chris, and we're going to call it Unusual Business.
Yeah. So the unusual business for this week's episode is we wanted to discuss Clubhouse and where it's come from and kind of like where it's going. It's been a really big international social media growth story over the course of the last 11 months, they said. So over the last almost a year. So what does that take us to? March 2020? Something like that. So starting then to now and into the future, Clubhouse is this app that you can do on iPhone where you can talk to other people all around the world and all around the country in different cities about all different types of subjects, whether they be politics or about your local community or about things that are going on in the environment with business and industry. A lot of people want to talk about technology companies and they want to talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and so many conversations about real estate, education, as in this awesome Clubhouse club a day or two ago, and they were discussing education in the Polynesian experience with education, and how the teachers are reacting, how the family members are reacting to folks getting their educations. Just a really fantastic story and perspective that, how do I get that perspective without, being in the room for that conversation during the pandemic? Like, I just can't. And so many of the conversations are very, very personal and really fantastic ways to kind of see the world from others' perspectives. And so Clubhouse is this big international growing phenomenon. Like, people are buying invitations to the app because it's not 100% public yet. And so everyone can't just sign up. It's still kind of in beta. So they're trying to figure out like what direction they're going to go. But if I had to describe it in just a few words, it would most easily be described as an assortment of teleconferences with, ranging from 2 people all the way up to 5,000 people. And I'm not sure I've ever been in a 5,000 person room, but I've been in 1,000 person rooms with celebrities and like big business people.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are looking to connect right now and not just connect on sort of, I think there's a lot of opportunities still for sort of shallow reach outs, right? Like I won't call them shallow, but sort of reaching out to somebody and just saying, hey, how are you doing? Right? That sort of thing. But some people are really looking for even deeper connections and deeper conversations that often you really have to go out of your way and find yourself in certain circles to have. And that was already hard before the pandemic, but now it's especially hard because we're just not going to those places to have those conversations. So, I think it's great for that reason. It's also great because if you don't know Chris personally, he likes to talk and he loves people and he loves being around people. And so this has been sort of a great way for him to still have connections and conversations and not just talk to me all the time because I'm the opposite. I love talking and I do enjoy people, but I really need quiet sometimes too. So this kind of gives him people to hang out with and give me some quiet every now and then. So godsend for people who are living together, couples that are living together in the same house for, 12 months, 13 months, however long this pandemic has happened. So I'm going out less.
Yeah, and what I love most about it is that these different teleconferences, really you could call them clubs, there's a strangeness and variability in it that feels kind of random because it's strangers. You don't know anyone and what they might say next. And so...
Which he likes, and I would find my social anxiety would be like, even the idea of it, honestly, it's just makes me extremely nervous. But for some people, Chris thrives on that.
with all the canceled conferences that happened over the course of the last 11, 12 months, like there's just all these conversations that haven't happened amongst people who may not know each other yet. And it's really getting, hundreds and thousands of different new connections, hundreds and thousands of different new connections and ideas into folks faster, and allowing folks to express themselves on subjects that they might be learning about. I've been in some cool climate change conversations I've been in a bunch of cool, like, how do we tie, like, business and sustainability together so that we can make sure that we're doing something economically beneficial for folks while we're fighting climate change, and how do we, get those opportunities to folks, and how do we express them? Because everyone, like, let's think about, like, what they learned about in school. Everybody learned about way different stuff in their different communities and in their different, let's say, college classes or seminars or technical schools. And there's so many different good bits of information that average people who haven't researched something may not know, and we can get it to a lot of people all at once. And it's really cool.
Well, and the feature that's really nice is that there is, you have to be allowed to speak in certain rooms. So it's not just chaos. There is really a way to sort of, filter out nonsense in a way, and that not you have to be sort of invited to speak. You have to actually think about what you're going to say. So people are sharing and communicating with one another, but they're communicating in a very thoughtful way, which is, communication I don't think is very useful when it's thoughtless. But I think when it's thoughtful and it's measured and people are listening, I think it can be extremely useful.
Extremely useful. And our country sometimes feels very separated, and people seem very distant and far away from one another, both geographically and in what they're thinking about and ideas. And this is a way to just flatten the earth back out as... I
thought the earth was already flat.
I think that was Friedman who wrote that like a decade ago. Yeah. And so it really helps to... Oh my gosh. You're bad.
You just got my flat earther joke.
And so there's just so much information, flying around in these rooms, and you don't have to stay. Like, the room is boring, like, hit click, like, leave, go to the next room. I think Clubhouse is really doing super cool stuff, and people are some of the clubs are in other languages that aren't English and aren't French. Or Spanish, and it's really cool. There's, learn to speak other languages. You can just sit there and listen to people talk in other languages, and, or speak in English about something you know nothing about, and, just start learning. And you can sit there and listen and never speak, and learn so much about subjects. Like I mentioned earlier, the Polynesians and education conversation. I didn't talk in there. I don't know anything about being a Polynesian in education. That's a place for me and a space for me to listen and learn and come out of it with more information than I went in with it. But I did find a whole lot of parallels, what folks were saying with other groups.
It's such an important soft skill. We really don't teach people, especially people who are in positions of power in a situation, how to listen properly. And this is something that I try to teach a lot in my classroom, right? When we have conversations where people don't generally get to have their voices heard, we have to prioritize. We have to really actively prioritize letting other people speak and not trying to jump in just because we feel like we should jump in. And that's partly just the fault of conditioning. We're all taught that in a conversation, we have to listen and we have to speak. But we don't always have to speak, right? Sometimes it's not our turn to speak. So that's definitely a benefit of this as well.
And I've been in some rooms with some really cool people, celebrities, business people. I've been in a couple rooms with Tiffany Haddish, the comedian. She's funny in the rooms, and she's funny on Netflix and in her comedy specials, in her movies. I've been in a room with Mark Andreessen, who's like a really big venture capitalist in Silicon Valley who's invested a lot of cool stuff. So, interesting to hear what he had to say and what others in the room and how they were interacting. Some folks I haven't been in the room with, but I heard are now on Clubhouse. Andrew Yang, who's running for mayor in New York City. And then Senator Tim Kaine apparently joined Clubhouse. I read a New York Times article earlier today, so I guess Tim Kaine's on there now too.
Thrilling.
Yeah, really thrilling guy. But you know
I'm
what?
just waiting for Blumenthal to pop in.
Oh, poor Senator Blumenthal
Guys,
from
where
Connecticut.
did everybody go?
No.
I'm kidding.
I'm sure people would line
Blumenthal,
up.
if you're watching our podcast, we don't mean it. We love your Spanish.
No, that's Bloomberg.
Oh, it is Bloomberg. I'm sorry. I'm sure Blumenthal's Spanish is great too. No.
I can't say. But it's definitely a place where like Congress people and senators could be and should be. Politicians should be in there listening to what people are saying and hearing some of the ideas.
Yeah.
And it allows you to communicate with them in a very town hall type of feel. And that's important. And it could be a very influential place now and in the future. Elon Musk was on there a week or two ago.
Sorry, I didn't make that face. I'll cut that right out.
Some celebrity news is made on there a little bit. I remember Kevin Hart went in there a few weeks ago and caused all kinds of ruckus. I have no idea what he said. I wasn't in the room.
Booed him out.
No, I doubt it.
Oh, okay.
But I think he probably said controversial stuff that then people got to talk about. So in a very like celebrity, create something to talk about, and then all these people splinter off and talk about it.
Yeah. Which is the other cool thing, right? That kind of like a conference, you can have these conversations and then you can go off and have other conversations that stem from that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think, just to sort of wrap that up, very useful tool for extroverts, but even just people who want to learn things, which should appeal to introverts too, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So I think that concludes our podcast for today. I don't know that we'll have really a set schedule for podcasting because it kind of depends on the schedules that we have. I mean, this is a week apart, which is great. I don't know if we'll do it next weekend, maybe the weekend after, kind of whenever we feel like. We're mostly just doing it for fun, to bond, to chat, to get a chance to catch up and talk about things that we're interested in. So, all right, I hope you enjoyed watching. And again, this is Unusual Business. It's our second episode. And we will see you next time. All right. Stay safe and warm, everybody. Bye.